Have you ever been playing a video game, stopped and wondered what secrets might be hidden out of bounds, or even what happens off camera during the cutscenes? Well, don't worry, I've got you covered. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the classic RPG adventure game Fable, which recently had its 20-year anniversary. Incidentally, I'll be covering the anniversary edition, and it is a brilliant adventure. So before we start, as always, a huge thank you to the game developers who spend countless hours making these games I cover on the channel. It's always amazing to see how they put the games together using the different tricks and techniques. But that said, again, as always, just be warned, there may be spoilers during the video, though I will try to keep them as minimal as possible.
She said a guild puppet would come. And here you are.
Okay, so after the game boots, we come to one of many title screens, as there are various images that randomly appear, and these are all of the different locations throughout the game. However, this one in particular is pretty interesting, as unlike the others, it has a defect. Though in this case, it's a useful defect that is hard to spot. This tiny gap in the image allows us to get a glimpse of what's behind the image. By moving the camera, we can see something is behind it. And it turns out it's the table and book on the menu screen. Whilst we're on this screen, just in case you were curious like I was, there is nothing around the table except a dark void. So let's get started with looking at the actual game. First of all, I just wanted to take a look at a few of the character models, as I always do in these videos. Mostly what we can find is pretty standard, eyes and a mouth. Though it's interesting to find that in the younger version of our character, his teeth appear to be longer horizontally than vertically. Characters' arms, hands and feet are cut off when wearing gloves and boots, which, strange as it may seem at first, this is probably to stop issues with the hands and feet clipping through the clothing. However, there are a variety of different character models. Not all have eyes, for instance, and some that do don't necessarily have the modelled eyes we're used to seeing. Take, for instance, Jack of Blades, whose eyes are actually part of his face and mask. Kinda like this chicken and other animals. Some characters have this bone and texture that can be found inside their necks. Sometimes this can just about be seen when a character is fairly animated. I'm sure I don't have to explain why this might be here, so for this section I'll cut it off now.
Oh, yes!
We're going to take a look at a few cutscenes now, more specifically at what happens behind the scenes and out of shot of the camera. Starting with some of the earlier scenes, there is quite a lot happening on screen all at once. The smaller clip in the corner is of the original scene, and the full clip is what I've captured to compare to.
It's really happening. They're here. You've got to hide.
Got one!
We must leave. It's not safe here. They're all dead. You don't want to join them, do you? Then give me your hand.
Shortly after these two scenes in Oakvale, we make our way to the Chamber of Fate. For those who don't know, depending on how you progress through the game, more and different murals get added to the walls. It's a really nice detail. However, during this cutscene, even though we haven't progressed through the game too far, some of you eagle-eyed viewers may notice a mural that doesn't belong here just yet. It is this one of Maze making a particularly bad choice. Of course, you never normally see this, and when the cutscene ends, the mural has vanished, meaning this scene must have been animated at the state in the game that had this part complete, which I thought was quite interesting. We'll also be revisiting the Chamber of Fate later in the video. You'll notice a lot of characters spawn into the scene just before they're on camera and disappear once off camera. Nothing too exciting there, but sometimes this can lead to interesting animations happening. Take for instance Twin Blades, who spawns into this scene with his arms held high before walking into shot. At the prison, Mother is initially laid on the rack, not that we'd ever see her like this normally.
I told you, touch me again and I'll wring your neck.
It's worth pointing out that if we pause the game just before a cutscene starts, for just a few frames before it starts, our character is sometimes lacking somewhat in the clothing department, whilst the game remembers which apparel we're wearing and loads it onto the model. Just in case you missed it, here it is again in slow motion. Of course, it isn't just characters that spawn out of shot before they enter the scene. Take for instance the ship of the drowned that rises out of the water to take us to the Lost Bay. Funnily enough, it doesn't rise fully out of the water. Not that it matters normally, as we won't be able to see on deck. You may be wondering where the characters go during a cutscene when not used. In this example, our child form and adult form characters are swapped in and out. Here we can see how they are kept just out of shot, ready to be used.
Hello, I remember you. We thought you died in that awful bandit raid all those years ago. So where have you been all this time? You do remember me, don't you? I was looking for Rosie, my teddy bear, just before the raid. After that day, my parents moved to Bowerstone, but I never really liked it there. Are you all right? I think I lost you there for a second. Anyway, I have to go now, but it was great to see you again. Bye!
Also, just in case you were wondering, here is what it looks like when you go to bed with your spouse without the black screen covering all the intense action.
I'm off to bed. You gonna follow?
Oh! Oh! Oh!
Short and sweet.
Damn. Pretty exciting stuff. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, I think that's enough cutscenes for now. Let's take a look at some out of bounds secrets. First of all, I just want to quickly show you what the sections of map look like so you can get a rough idea of the playable areas and just how huge some of the non-playable areas are. For instance, the location of Burrowfields has a ginormous unplayable area, in fact most of which the player can't even see. Now, some of this could be where maps overlap into different locations. For instance, where we enter Oakvale, we can see this texture pattern on the map. Once in Oakvale, if we fly the camera out again, we can find the same pattern. It's just some of the terrain like rocks and trees are missing. Some of the unplayable areas initially are also opened later in the game, Oakvale being another good example of this. However, I do get the feeling some places in the maps were going to be something, and are now discarded and unused, like this sunken section way out of the map in Barrowfields. I'm pretty sure it's not somewhere we visit and could potentially have been a waterfall and lake in the distance. Similar situation to that of Oakvale when the beach becomes available. The same goes for this canyon that the river meets way out of bounds. Could this be a discarded part of the map? The Heroes Guild also has some discoveries which are questionable. Behind these bookcases there seems to be an extra part of the building which looks like it could have been an unfinished corridor. I haven't played the Lost Chapters version of the game, or Fable 2 or 3 for that matter, so maybe someone could confirm if this was ever used in those. Along with this doorway, which can only be seen from the outside by flying the camera out here. Interiors such as the caverns are often held within the dark void, with minimal map surrounding them. Sometimes there are multiple interiors held within one area, especially when the different interiors are used close together during a scene, for instance the prison and the torture cells, which can be seen later during a cutscene. Taking a look at how the Kraken works under the water was something I was particularly interested in. It turns out the body of the Kraken is always down below the surface, even whilst passing through this part of the map before the fight begins on the return journey. You just can't see it because it's hiding below the floor texture. Now, this was particularly hard to film because obviously the camera is in totally the wrong place and I was still having to fight the Kraken. But during the fight, the tentacles are not connected at all. In fact, as you can see, they are totally separate to the body itself. Once you beat them, the Kraken rises up from below, and then sinks back down after being defeated to eventually disappear. One of the things I first noticed when I started to look around in the game was the huge moon in the sky. Now, in a lot of games we've looked at in the past, moons and suns tend to be either a sphere with light coming from them between the map and the sky dome, or simply a flat texture within the sky dome. This, however, is very clever because even right up until the camera is flat against the sky dome, it still looks as though it's its own texture, though I think it is actually part of the sky dome itself. It's kinda hard to tell. Other Out of Bounds discoveries can be found too, including some eyes below the Prophet's Chamber, for reasons I'm not entirely sure of. If you do think you know why these are here, feel free to drop a comment. A cube, which can be found directly under the part of the map which contains the Temple of Eivor, which I guess could be linked with something to do with the donations made at that temple. And also at the arena we can find some of the crowd outside of the stands. I guess these could be the originals that were copied and pasted into the arena, though strangely, when we visit the arena for the second time, when there is no crowd at all, some different models can be found. Coming towards the end now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, we are returning to the Chamber of Fate for one of my favourite Out of Bounds finds. If you've played the game before, you may know about this already, but one of the most powerful swords in the game is the Sword of Aeons, which we have the option to collect after defeating Jack of Blades towards the end of the game. The funny thing about this is, it's here all the way through from the first time we enter the chamber, right through the fight scene up until the time we collect it, which happens to be a separate model from the one Jack is holding and using against us. You can even do a clipping glitch which allows you to collect it early.
I am no mortal man.
That is it for this one. I really hope you've enjoyed this video covering the Out of Bounds Secrets of Fable. Just before it ends, I'd like to do a few shoutouts. First of all to Mesa. Now, I did actually make a free camera myself for this video to shoot the menu screens and cutscenes and various other shots, but I did also use Mesa's camera, which came in very handy to shoot some of the more general shots too. I'll leave a link in the description to their camera and website if you'd like to have a look at that yourself. Also, I've had a lot of great Slippy caution signs posted on my Discord server since the last episode from various games. It's just something we do on the server for a bit of fun, so if you find one in a game you're playing, feel free to come and post it and I'll do my best to add it to a future video. But that is it, thanks again and I hope to catch you soon.